Okay, there's something I wanted to talk about. It's a little bit outside of my normal wheelhouse, but if you're a video gaming fan and you've played World of Warcraft, I think you'll appreciate my take on this. And I've been wanting to make this video for a while, and it's essentially about solo shuffle, which is a new PvP mode that they put in there where you can essentially solo queue instead of having to try and find a team. And ever since the beginning, I've kind of been of this mindset, but I think I've just been proven correct over the last, couple years when they've had this mode in the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this video that Venruki has put out where he is covering some of the recent conversation around this topic, and it gives you some viewpoints from regular people and more established PvPers. And I'll go through where my thought process is on it and why I think solo shuffle was A, necessary, but B, just a much better experience for the average PvPer.
I think it all started with this. It's all with Big Moran here. Big Moran's the instigator. Big Moran starts off, he says, "It's funny and sad to me that there is a minority of PvPers who still see the game through the lens of 3v3. The bracket is dying and is already dead for 90% of the player base. It will suffer the exact same fate as RBGs by next expansion. Solo Shuffle is the only bracket that matters. If you don't realize this now, you're delusional."
So my initial take on that's exactly in line with what I've thought about it. And I think it's for a few reasons, but I'll get into that a little bit more as the video continues.
That's a strong take. Shuffle is fine. I think I like Shuffle, but I think it's junk food PvP that everyone plays of convenience. The MMR LFG system for threes being permanently neglected by the devs. I feel bad for anyone who doesn't get to experience the joys of sending threes with people you enjoy queuing with.
So junk food is kind of a strong take on this one. I think it's more just a bracket where what you can do is you can play at your own convenience. It's not junk food. I mean, sure, it's not as tightly coordinated as a 3v3 with people who you queue up with, who you know. But that's kind of the problem, is that it's knowing people to play with. And a huge issue about it is just the experience for the average player in World of Warcraft PvP. So to go back and take a look at who I am and how I qualify this, because I don't really make videos on WoW PvP anymore. I used to way back when Warcraft movies was around. But essentially, I used to be super into the game. I was rank 1 for RBGs when they came out in Cataclysm. I actually led a group. I started a guild where I only invited people who are 2K plus in, and I would queue up with them. And some of them it was just ever, right? So they may have hit it in TBC and they weren't very good. And then, in today's world, it's kind of like now, right? I quit for 10 years. I came back. I'm not really good anymore. I came back and I was like, what the heck? Everyone at 1600 is doing things that I was doing playing against rank 1 players. So was good. Now I'm probably a little bit over average because I've been kind of playing on and off since Shadowlands. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm taking a look at this. So when I came back, though, most of the people that I played with, and especially the ones who I climbed the highest with, all quit or I wasn't really in touch with. And so I actually had to go through this experience of what an average player has to endure. So when people are writing all of these, you have to keep a lens on it where you're saying they don't have the average player experience. And actually one time I was watching Venruki on Twitch and I tried to express that to him and he didn't quite get what I was saying. And I don't think it's from a point of he's completely out of touch, because actually I think he's great. That's why I even still watch his videos at all, is that he actually has a mindset that is more normie, if you will, to understand what some of the regular players' struggles are. But even he just has a friends list full of people who are all rank 1. So he doesn't quite get it as well. But from the average person's take, what happens is you queue up or you get into LFG, you wait, you find maybe one person that wants to play with you, you play a game with them, and if you lose, they pretty much leave immediately. And you could have just been in LFG for 30 plus minutes. And if you're trying to queue threes, that's a nightmare, because now you have two people that are doing that. Or, hey, I just want to now it's not so much of an issue, but I just want to refresh my vault. I just want to get my one win a week for the vault, and now I'm out. Or they get afraid because they got carried to a higher rating. So then you start playing games, and it's obvious that there's no way they could have achieved this by themselves. And so then they lose, they're afraid that they're going to lose the rating, and then they quit. So the system is awful as an experience in LFG if you don't have set friends. And that's the thing, is that honestly, I don't think that threes has been neglected. If anything, I think them adding solo shuffle in was the cure for it, because I don't need to run threes. And there's a bunch of other reasons too, which I'll get into further, but that's kind of the crux of the issue, is that as someone who doesn't have the friends, isn't as established after being gone for a long time, it's an awful experience. And for anyone who's trying to use the LFG system, no one wants to do it. No one wants to do it because it's just horrible. It's not fun. And again, I'll get into the other points further into the video.
I do agree that the max fun you can have in World of Warcraft PvP is group queuing with some friends that you like and working together to get better. The problem is it's kind of a pipe dream for most people. Most people just experience the terrible LFG. And I do think...
And that's 100% correct. If I could queue up with friends, I would love doing that. But exactly to his point, that's not realistic for the average player. It's just not. If you think it is, you're completely out of touch. And the reason solo shuffle as popular as it is because of that fact.
I will say I do have to agree that this is a little bit on Blizzard. The fact that they haven't iterated on or made their LFG system better even a little bit seems insane to me personally. And this is coming from someone who actually likes solo shuffle, but the LFG system being as bad as it is actually pretty wild. So we'll see how this thread evolved. So then Big Moran, he goes on to say, let me be clear, I think 3v3 is cool. It's a valuable competitive experience that I wish more people could enjoy. Okay. The reality is that Solo Shuffle dwarfs every other game mode in sheer volume of players. On North America, there are 240,000 players with Solo Shuffle rating, 160,000 players with Blitz rating, 112,000 with 2v2 rating, 73,000 with 3v3 rating, and 13,000 with RPG rating.
And again, this just proves my point that I'm saying. Why is it so much more popular than every single bracket? Is because those other brackets' experiences are awful. Like, you can complain about the queue times, but for the average player, again, you have the same thing where you're looking for 30 minutes, you play one game, you lose, and now you're in queue again for 30 minutes. And you could even break that down. So let's say time-wise, what are the chances that you're going to win 6 times in a row? That's just realistically not going to happen, right? It's not balanced that way. Their matchmaking isn't balanced that way. You could go on a tear and win 3, 4, 5. But so let's break that down. So you sit for 20 to 30 minutes in a queue for solo shuffle, and you get to play 6 games. Or if you're in LFG, you play 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, maybe. You might get lucky and find someone who's realistic about how the games are actually going to go. But after you lose a game or two, again, you're right back into queue. And I am not exaggerating where I say right before Solo Shuffle was released, if I was trying to find a healer, because the problem is the same, there's just not healers. So even if you're looking in LFG, that doesn't actually fix the problem. Because if I'm looking for a 3v3, I still have to wait. I have to find a DPS. I have to find a healer, and I have to hope that both of them are equally skilled, and that one of them doesn't rage out and just rage quit immediately after one loss. And so if I'm sitting in LFG, we'll even be generous and say 10 minutes, and I play 2 games, 3 games, lose, now I'm in there again. The time is essentially a wash. So people saying, "Oh, this is so awful because there's such long queue times." Well, I get 6 games for that queue time. Yes, it's not instant as if I was queuing, but again, if you average it out, that okay, I queued up a few, we lost, now I'm back in LFG, now I have to find a new healer, and I'm still waiting for probably as long as a solo shuffle, but I'm not getting as many games. The actual experience of it, for me, if you actually think about it logically, is way better for solo shuffle than trying to find people in LFG for threes.
At 1800 plus, there are over 5 times more shuffle players than threes players. Pandora's box is open. There's no going back. Just look at LFG for 3v3. It says it all. I remember in Legion, I transferred to Horde where it was more popular and there's 30 plus postings of threes. There were hardly any. Factions are combined now too. It's especially easier to solo queue as a healer. Queue times are so fast.
And I will 100% agree with Casey's point here. The last time I tried to look in threes, because there are times where I just recently actually, I leveled up. I waited till War Within went on sale because I was a little bit angry about them doing the pre-release and then nerfing the XP. So I said I'm not going to buy it until they're discounting the cost of the expansion. So I did that. And I geared up my mage into all greens. And then I tried to do LFG, even for 2v2, just to say, hey, I know what I'm doing, but my gear is absolutely horrible. I want to try and grind some conquest really quickly. I had to give up. There was no one in LFG to begin with because solo shuffle is just easier. And yeah, I went in and my MMR was high relatively. And so I got pummeled for a few rounds until it tanked. And then I just climbed right back up again. So even for the times that I have tried to use it recently, Casey is 100% correct here. No one's using LFG. No one's even in the queues for these systems anymore. They're gone. No one's going to play these anymore. So people need to stop trying to cope and say, oh, I want 3v3 back. No, solo shuffle, man. Solo shuffle. That's what it's going to be. And I think there's more reasons for this, which I'll get into later as well.
Yeah, if you're a healer, you can basically do whatever you want. There are a lot of healers though that do prefer playing threes. But like if you're a
yes and yes. So again, if the queue time is that big of an inconvenience for you, which I don't even think the queue time is that bad, to be honest, because you can just do some dailies or do dragon riding, or there's so many things in the game that you can do just baseline that it doesn't even really matter in between. I don't think, I do one dragon riding race and the queue pops. It's not that bad. And that's the thing is, if you are really concerned about the queue time, just play a healer. And to his, to Venruki's point here, yes, because of course, if I was a healer, I 100% would want to play threes more. But that's the thing is, it's still almost impossible to find one in the 3v3 queues. But I get what he's saying because, yeah, you can yell in comms, hey, I'm CC'd. Because that's the thing about solo shuffle is you see someone where they're just off like a donkey in mid, eating every single counter spell and kick in the game. And yeah, okay, you have less control over what your teammates are doing, which as a healer, you would prefer that they're not out there, getting nuked down and instead are using LOS. But guess what? That's just a part of the game, and try and type it out really quick before the gates open.
Healer, and you only have a limited amount of time to play. You don't have to deal with the long queues. You get to just play. So you kind of incentivize there. Let me keep going through this. There's more. Yeah, Big Moran made a poll. All right, let's just keep going here. This is all Big Moran. Okay, making a poll. Read carefully. If you could only keep one bracket in PvP and delete the rest, what would you keep? That's hard. Delete the rest. First of all, I don't like the premise of this question, but...
And the results of this are hilarious to me because you can tell that it is the X community who are the most dedicated. So, of course, they all say 3v3. I want to keep 3v3. I love 3v3. But again, what he was showing before with who's playing each bracket, the normies who aren't talking about World of Warcraft on X, they're telling you solo shuffle is what we want to do. That's what those numbers tell you, that it blows all the other brackets out of the water. No one cares about organized 3v3 anymore. So again, this is a very diehard community. So the fact that there's such blowback about it make sense.
How many people were pulled here? There's 600 votes. 50% of people said they want threes, and they would kill all the other brackets for it. Then Big Moran comes in here. He says, the remove solo queue community when Blizzard removes solo queue and over half the PvP player base disappears. I do think that there is this thought process right now that if you somehow killed solo queue or removed solo shuffle and blitz and made everyone kind of group queue for everything, that all the people that play blitz and shuffle would somehow play threes, and I don't think that's true. I think a lot of people would just quit.
He's 100% correct, especially at this point in time. And again, this is me speaking from kind of a more normie viewpoint, because I still haven't. I've played with. I found some people that I played with a little bit actually in TBC Classic, who are very good, extremely good players. I enjoy playing with them. They're very highly skilled, but they have stopped playing retail. I would play retail with them a little bit in Shadowlands actually. So I would play a little bit with them, but then they put out Solo Shuffle, and I don't really care anymore. I still love playing with them when I do, but I don't do it very often. And if they did take it out, I don't care enough about the game anymore to continue playing and try and do 3v3 again, because I'm so fed up with just the things around the game. And this is not to be super inflammatory, but it just is so eye roll to me that I'm playing the game and there's women with beards in this expansion, and 70% of the relationships were between a man and a man or a woman and a woman in Dragonflight. And the number, the percentage might be a little bit off, but the point still stands that they're forcing down stuff that I don't care, but it's annoying when expansion after expansion, you're seeing this ideological BS rammed down your throat. And that plus the uninspiring gameplay loops, like outside of PvP, what counts as a major content patch to them? Okay, they release a new raid, which I don't particularly care to participate in outside of the looking for raid system, because I just don't have the time. I don't care to have to log in from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. 2 nights a week, or whatever typical raid groups do nowadays. I just don't care. I hate having the rigidity of that schedule anymore. So for me, I honestly would just quit. I don't want to sit in, again, I think people are so far removed from what the average player experiences in LFG. And if you don't believe me, just try and do it yourself. If you're a rank 1 PvPer, just try and make an alt that no one knows is your alt. Do it on the side. Queue up for looking for group with regular people, not any of your friends, not allowed to play with any of your friends, and let me know how that experience goes for you. Now imagine having to do that day in and day out, and how much time you waste, and how little you get to actually play 3v3. Try that out and let me know how it goes for you. So I 100% agree. I'm one of these people where I would just immediately quit if they took Solo Shuffle out of the game.
Because the LFG system is so bad, Wouldn't happen if they added a proper solo/flex queue to threes that allowed players to earn Gladiator Mount 2. Shuffle needs to be replaced. Now, this is an interesting proposition. Okay, so I've seen a lot of takes, and I don't know where I read it originally, but I did hear an alternative to Solo Shuffle that sounded interesting to me. And the alternative to Solo Shuffle is that you could solo queue the 3v3 bracket, okay? So you would just queue up, and you get put into a threes game. And you would play against anyone. Like, you could duo queue into a threes game, you could solo queue into a threes game, or you could trio queue into a threes game. So there is the problem, of course, that if you're a solo player, you're going to be playing against 3 stacks, right?
This is why this makes absolutely no sense. And I hate the argument for solo or duo queue into threes, is that you're going to get an awful comp, and he touches on this, but you're going to get an awful comp, or you're going against 3 people who are in voice queue, which is just a non-starter. I'm not interested. I'm sorry. I don't know who the third person is. Like, you're always disadvantaged going into that system. And again, same thing. I would not participate. I'm not interested. That's the beauty about solo shuffle, is that it makes you play with everyone else, and the top performers rise to the top. So every single time you rise, you're not disadvantaged in every way. You have to play with everyone. And that's the beauty of solo shuffle.
But the only thing that I heard that maybe makes that okay is, number one, it would help you find threes partners. It would kind of concentrate everyone into one bracket, which is nice. So, yeah, 3v3 would just be more active, and it would just focus more people into a bracket, which is nice. The other thing I heard is that
everyone's already forced into a bracket. It's called solo shuffle. I understand what he's trying to say here, but again, everyone's already forced into solo shuffle. Just everyone has to play solo shuffle. If everyone wants to cry about not being able to coordinate, add voice into solo shuffle. I'm pretty sure they actually have in-game voice communications. Just put it on. The problem with that is that I don't really want to listen to other people who think that they're better at the game than they are yelling at you. Because at the point in the life cycle of where this game is, it's a bunch of degenerates who have been playing this for like 20 years and are not better than they think they are. So many people think that they're better at this game than they think they are. And they don't have a realistic representation of how good they actually are at the game. And that, again, I'm not tooting my own horn. I am, at this point, I max out at around 2K, except in the Battleground Blitz, where I think my MMR was like 3.4K. And it just takes so long to grind up the actual rating. I got my elite set, and I just don't care. I really don't. So, but that's the thing, and that's what would happen in threes in LFG, is that people would just flame you because they think that they're doing everything right, when again, in reality, they're standing in the middle of the map, just getting teed off on by the other team and exposing their healer, dragging their healer out because it's trying to, save them. And then the healer gets CC'd a million times. Like, that's the thing, is people are so inept and unrealistic about what their actual skill set is that having to endure them in voice chat would not be fun. And to the point of finding teammates, you can already do that with solo shuffle. There have been so many times where I've messaged someone where, it's me and them, and we both go 4-4 or 4-2 or 5-1 or whatever. We both do really well, and then we message each other outside of the game. And I'm still not interested in trying to make friends with them and queue with them into threes. So I don't really think that argument is particularly useful. They just want to play solo shuffle. I just want to play solo shuffle. I don't want to go back into threes. I don't care, because there's a litany of other problems with threes, and I can go into them. But essentially, like, I would be at 1600 with my friends, and they would be like, oh, that's Peekaboo's alt. Like, why is Peekaboo at 1600? Oh, because he's farming us for content. Oh, that's, this person. Oh, there's Maldiva, who goes out in 1v2s. We kill his partner immediately, or his partner's hiding around a pillar. He just comes out and he immediately 1v2s me and the person that I'm trying to run with at 1800 or whatever. Like, yeah, this is not, I'm not playing to get farmed or to have people who are getting carried just destroy me. Solo shuffle, it's so much harder to do that because it's all individual queues. There are some instances where there's win trading or whatever, but it's so much less than in threes. And that's the thing about having the skill knowledge and understanding. I can identify when people are getting carried, and it was so flagrant in 3v3 that almost made me want to quit right on the spot, because that this person is not there's no way that these people should be at this level. And the fact that they are is just blatantly they're being carried. It's a carry. It's content. You're just getting memed on. This is not a fun experience. People hate it. We're sick of it. That's another reason, because people think it's just LFG. It's not just LFG. It's because all the people who are pros at this game have been basically plundering and treating the average audience like trash, and no one's been able to say anything about it because, the average player isn't going to be making videos for YouTube. They're just not. So you're not hearing this perspective, but I guarantee you that there is some subset that just gets so frustrated that they are literally getting 1v2'd at 1600. There it is. And that's the thing, is you guys don't think about it, or the rank 1 players don't think about it, and they just like to complain. But what do you think that experience is like for the average player? They're not having fun. And that's what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a game. You're supposed to be having fun. You're supposed to be playing against players in your own skill level. That's not what's happening in threes. It was so pervasive when I came back. I couldn't believe it. And you would just see these people just farming out content. So again, you have done this to yourself.
That you could make a solo queue rating within threes. So if you queue threes by yourself, you actually have a solo queue rating, which would be different. So like everyone would play in the same bracket, but if you solo queue, you have a...
And that part I do like, where it would be a completely... But then again, you're breaking up the bracket. You're not actually inflating the threes bracket because you have your own solo rating. It's a detraction from what everyone's arguing for, which is 100% all the rank 1 community. Oh, it's so hard to climb. Yeah, because no one wants to play it because you ruined the bracket. So this doesn't help that. Yes, you're funneling everyone into threes, so the queues are more, but again, your ratings are off. It doesn't fit correctly. So I don't think this actually solves a problem that they think it solves by adding them in, because the only fair way is to have a separate rating, which Venruki talks about right here.
You could make a solo queue rating within threes. So if you queue threes by yourself, you actually have a solo queue rating, which would be different. So like everyone would play in the same bracket, but if you solo queue, you have a solo queue rating. And you would get your own kind of rewards and your own climbing based off that.
And the other thing too is then you would also, by that logic, also have to have a duo bracket as well. So you have a solo, a duo, and a 3v3. So again, yes, you're adding in more players, but then how does that even get tabulated when each one of those is a different dynamic? And so really you would only be having the 3v3 by itself, because you couldn't queue, because how are you going to give these people rating? Because that's the thing that doesn't really make sense. How are you going to give the 3v3 rating for beating up on solos and duos? And then how are solos and duos going to have their own brackets, but then threes doesn't have its own bracket where it only plays against 3v3? It's just patently unfair, and it makes sense when you're trying to say, oh yeah, get everyone in there, but if you actually think about it, it doesn't actually, it's not logical.
Now, I don't know. I haven't thought about all the potential problems with that, but I did think that was semi-interesting. Would never work. That could be cool. I don't know why it would never work.
Again, just to reiterate, it could never work because you'd only have the threes feasting on the... So it's just basically artificial inflation. But even then, they shouldn't even be playing against solos and duos, because if you're going to have specific brackets for solos and duos, then trios... I don't know why you would allow it to artificially inflate their ratings. Again, it just seems like something that rank 1 players are asking for so they can get their end of season rewards sooner, instead of being hard stuck at 2K 2.2 at the beginning of the season. Again, cry me a river. The average player doesn't care.
We got this. We got Revsy. The solo queue community, when they remember PvP, was 100 times more active prior to solo shuffle. I do think that there's a reason why they added solo queue, right?
Because no one was playing. They added it to make it easier, because the complaints were no one wanted to play it. And this is such a ridiculous take, because if you've watched any of the videos from like Belluar or whoever, the game in general is dying. It was 100 times more active before with everything, including Mythic Dungeons, any type of rating. All of those metrics have went down because the game is dying, because it's not fun to play anymore in general. Why do you think they added in delves? Because so people can do it solo, because the community around Mythic Dungeons is so toxic. where, oh, one thing went wrong, auto quit. It's not my key. I don't care. It's just not fun. Dealing with the people who continue to play this game is not fun. The only way to make it enjoyable is to add in something where you can queue it solo and be placed into a group. And that's just what it is. And it may have been more popular then, but I mean, what counts for content? I go out to something and I have to join a group to kill elites. This isn't a content loop. This isn't fun. Nobody enjoys this. There's a little bit of story with it. There's an item that they put in there to try and incentivize it. No one cares. No one cares anymore. This is not, again, it's a dying game. So you crying about, oh, it was way more active when it was before Solo Shuffle was implemented. It was implemented because it needed to be implemented because the game is dying. Sorry, that's the truth. Truth hurts, but that's where it is.
I think people forget that. Like, there was a reason why they added solo queue to begin with, and originally the community liked it, and I still think there's a lot of people that do like solo queue. Because I could be like...
Also, correlation is not causation.
Like, if I could be like a moderate on this topic, the people that want to just get rid of solo queue and force everyone to, LFG and look at threes, that's obviously not a good solution. People will just not bother with that. Unless Blizzard somehow did like a crazy update to LFG. I mean, threes was more active, right? If not, show proof. Shadowlands Season 4 is typing more alive than the faded season of Dragonflight. Did you look at the picture I linked? I did not. No. What is it? I drew this up years ago. Let's see what this is. You select which specs you'd like to play with or queue up. It'll match you with people that line up with your selections within 100 MMR of yourself and put you directly in an arena with them. After the game, there will be a queue again button, which will party you up. There will be a add recently played. That would be good. I like everything about that, except that you can pick your spec to queue with. That's the only thing I don't like. Because...
And again, at this point, this is essentially solo shuffle. Like, I get it, right? You're trying to foster a community more. But then the other thing, too, is you also don't have voice comms when you're going into it. So you're still disadvantaged versus regular teams queuing up at whatever rating that you're at. Because if they're all queued together and they're in voice comms, you're going to get destroyed every time. That's just how it works. So it's nice in theory, but it still wouldn't be able to be in the same ladder as 3v3 arena. Because you're pulling in 3 random people with no voice comms.
I think there's a problem where people will be even more inclined to just be meta slaves, Like, why on earth would you ever fucking queue with a Windwalker monk if you can just click Feral and Rogue instead, To give people some comp selection? I suppose so, yeah, but...
And that is one of the other things, too, that I like about Solo Shuffle a lot, is that I don't have to deal with annoying classes and comps if I'm not playing the most optimal thing. Again, if you're in LFG, you're probably not playing the most optimal comp that exists. Again, beggars can't be choosers. You just take what you get. And so once you get to a certain level, you just get destroyed by things that are meta. And that's the beautiful thing about Solo Shuffle, is you have to play with each one of those other, if you're looking at it from the DPS perspective, you have to play with each one of those 3 other classes and both healers. And so it's just much more balanced. You don't have to worry about what's flavor of the month because everyone's going to play with everyone and the best player arises. Which is why I think Solo Shuffle, just in general at a baseline, is a much better experience than threes because you don't have to go up against the solved comp. And the game is so old at this point that everyone knows what's good. And if you're not running it, especially as you, again, once you start climbing higher, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage.
Pick spec, why is my queue an hour? Yeah, it would make the queues way worse. That also encourages proper balancing. I suppose so, yeah. But yeah, I'm not really sure. But I do think that there is potentially something to changing the solo queue system in WoW. There has to be a solo queue system in WoW. I do believe that, but I thought it was at least interesting that you could kind of combine the 3v3 bracket and...
He's right, and as long as you have a solo queue, no one's going to queue for the rest of them, and they're just going to continue to die. because as that goes in, it's literally just making the experience worse and worse. Like I said, at the beginning of this expansion, when I had all greens, I literally couldn't find anyone. I got so frustrated that I was like, screw it. Let's just destroy my solo shuffle ranking, and then I'll just climb back up as I gear. And that's what I did. Because the experience just gets worse and worse and worse and worse the longer that solo shuffle is in there, and the more that people just play that instead of organized threes.
In the solo queue bracket. And that way, if you are a player that solo queues, you can still get like Gladiator and stuff like that, which I think could be cool. I wanted to look at something Absturge said. Absturge replied to Big Moran. Absturge says, solo shuffle unironically drives a WoW PvP into the ground. If I wanted to play a solo queue, log in and hit queue game, I'd play literally anything else. Not the game that requires me to spend $150 a month, $60 for every new expansion, that I have to spend hours leveling and gearing in to wait 30 minutes in queue just to have someone type 06 healer DPS and get right back into another 30-minute queue. I think this is a slight doomer take by my good friend Absturge.
Yeah, not just doomer, but again, this is rank 1 mentality, where you haven't had to experience the game from the other person. Like, yes, okay, there is a large investment into the game with paying for expansions, paying for subscription, etc., but now you're basically just forcing everyone into the version of the game that you prefer to play. When again, I think to this point I've made the case that that's not the best experience for the average player of the game. And just because this is the way that you've played it and you have a plethora of people at your fingertips that you can send a message to and say, hey, let's queue up, that's not the average person anymore. I mean, if I think about the people that I used to play with, none of them. I think I have 2 people that I know that I used to play with that still play the game. And neither of them were really PvPers. They were just people that I ran a PvE guild. I got, very close to them. And the only reason I still keep in touch with them is because I know them out of the game. Like any of the rest of them, I just don't. This is a rank 1 mentality take where, this is all this stuff that I've invested. And you're trying to garden wallet, where you're saying, everyone, because everyone invests money into it, they all want the same thing. No one wants the same thing that you want. No one wants it. That's why solo shuffle's popular. Again, if no one wanted it, no one would be playing solo shuffle. You're totally disregarding all of the issues that I've already talked about to this point. And again, it just shows you're just trying to gatekeep. You're just trying to say the thing that I like is the purest form of the game, when in reality, no one agrees with you. No one agrees with you. And, sorry to say it, but Rude Awakening rank 1 players, that's the truth.
Absturge says, it's so sad to see the numbers because it's just not sustainable at all. PvP player base will lessen every season, and our way of keeping them is, hey, sit 30-minute shuffle queues, please. Yeah, I do think long-term the 30-minute queues are unsustainable.
No. Again, because you don't have the experience of the average player. You're spending more time in LFG than you are in these queues on average. I've done it. It's awful, especially at off times. Like if I'm playing late at night or something, finding people in LFG is a nightmare. Just because you can get instant queues by PSTing your friends list and know that you're getting quality players, that's not the average player experience.
I think it's one of the bigger problems, for sure. What did Big Moran say? He was just talking about threes and how threes is a dying bracket and it's going to go the way of the dodo bird. Let's see. Let's see what this person says. He says, I have almost exclusively done soul shuffle since Dragonflight. The higher I get, the longer queues I get, the less I want to play. So later in the season, when I'm 2100, 2400, my queues are 30 minutes. Sometimes I typically quit queuing. If some of my queues were sub 3 minutes every time, I would be queuing all the time, all season, every season. I genuinely do not give a shit about threes bracket at all. These are definitely the biggest issue regarding shuffle. Agreed. With that said, the sad reality is queues will never be that fast. There's not enough healers, not enough players in general. No one new is playing PvP. Not enough rewards for the current players to stick around.
Yeah, that's the point. the game is dying in general. The issue is that it's not, no one cares about the game anymore. It's just the last gasps. They implemented solo shuffle because that's what needed to happen to keep the game even remotely alive and keep PvP remotely going. They wouldn't have put it in because they refused it. People have been calling for this for so long. They have refused it for so long. And they finally looked at the metrics of where participation is, and they said, throw their hands up in the air and said, all right, let's do it. Let's put solo shuffle in. Maybe it'll save the PvP community. And in a large part, I mean, yes, again, it continue. I think the game is dying mostly because of the unfun gameplay loops for literally everything except for when a new expansion drops. But this is what you're left with. Again, this is crocodile tears, bro. As the average player, we've been exploited for content. We've been exploited for carries, and we're just sick of it. We don't care. And again, it might not be him specifically, but there's such a community of the carrying and the content and you have to do things to get people to watch you. You've been farming it out at the expense of the average player for so long now to this point that we're just sick of it. Solo shuffle is a way to circumvent all of that as well. And so when people finally got into it and realized what a better average player experience it was, we just don't care, man. We don't care your opinion. And again, it's the general trend of the game is dying anyway. So this is just another nail in that coffin.
The only thing in 11.1 to somewhat address this is a list of healer changes / buffs. Outside of that, none of this is being resolved, so Shuffle will continue to sap the energy out of the remaining PvPers until everybody quits. Jesus, man. As a new PvP healer, I made it about 4 days before going back to raiding. I can get the perfect rep Hodge and pin the healer for an eternity and nobody dies. Your haste might as well be 0 compared to PvE as well. It just feels bad. Not to mention the endless CC you deal with.
See, now, this is a much better explanation. Like, in the most recent push that I did when I was playing, the healer's just no cast bar. You don't have to, you just literally just instant heal and you're back up to full. And that's almost every single healer has that. Like, Mistweaver Monk starts doing their healing. You can interrupt them and it literally does nothing. I have no idea how the class really even works, how they heal. You know, Paladins just instant cast heal their team to full. Every single healer, it feels like, has something that is just completely uninterruptible, unstoppable, and again, 0 to 100, and it doesn't matter because even if you get CC'd, and then dampening goes in, and it actually sort of matters. But this is a more regular take from an average person, and frankly, I agree with him because again, nothing. And that's the thing. You encounter a healer. I remember when I came back, there was a priest out in the open world, and I decided I was gonna fight him, and I didn't even touch his health bar. He completely just destroyed me. And it was 100 to 0, and I literally couldn't do anything against him. So again, it's the state of the game. It's the way that Blizzard has continually built their game, and it makes it so it's unfun to play against. And that's just how it is, because they wanted to make healers feel more powerful so people would play them. But the problem is, if no one wants to be a healer, no one wants to be a healer. It's not making them super buff like that. Again, it's the wrong moves for the game. And while we're on gameplay loops, one of my biggest issues is I actually liked it when you would set up a CC chain and then kill something. Whereas now it's literally just micro CCs, unlimited mobility. It's not fun to play against. You know, everyone has a stun. Half of them don't DR on each other. Like, it's just awful experience being on the other side of it. It's not fun. So again, just another thing along with those uninspired gameplay loops that are just driving the game into the ground. It has nothing to do with solo shuffle.
I do think that the PvP rewards are bad. Definitely not ideal. I agree with that. It's interesting to see where the community's at on this one. See what else people responded to. Rank 1s and multi-lads blaming solo shuffle for killing PvP as part of the issue. Only thing solo shuffle did was remove the casual player base variability from legacy rated PvP modes. If anything, instead of blasting the casual PvPers for wanting rewards, how about listening to the player base? Rec ones forget that there were new once upon a time. They were new once upon a time. There's literally no gateway into threes if you're a new player.
That is more or less what I'm saying, with a little bit less. I mean, it's X, right? So he doesn't have the space to do it. But yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. It's all the rank 1s and multi-glads have no idea what it's like to be an average player. And we don't care anymore. That's why all the numbers say that solo shuffle is more popular.
Abster says, I think you're confused as to who I am and what I've tried to do for WoW, which is fair. Can't meet or know everyone. Happy to meet you. I've done nothing but advocate for better systems and making the game better for casuals for almost a decade. Whether it's a reward structure, MMR system, LFG systems, gearing, unfortunately those things aren't and will never be fixed. There's a reason it's been 2 years of 30-minute queues for solo shuffle. The reason is they simply do not care. I'm gonna... You know what I think is underrated as kind of a side note is Battleground Blitz.
You could tell he was thinking it, but he didn't want to say it. Or maybe he was. I don't know. But when I see that, him saying you're confused with who I am and bro, again, you have mind rot. You're just thinking as rank 1. Again, go back in, queue up as a random person. Let me know how that goes for you. Create an alt, go into the LFG system. Don't play with your friends, and let me know how that goes for you. I guarantee you it will be the worst experience you've ever had. Whether you've been advocating for it or not, that doesn't change what the facts of the issues are. You may have been... The problem is you're probably advocating for it in a way that serves you. And that has probably led to a lot of decisions that have been made that negatively impact us, the average players. And that's the thing, is that when the game has been built in that way, it's going to leave... If it's built for the 1%, it leaves 99% behind. Because it's just not... We want something that's fun. At the end of the day, it's fun. We don't care about competitive. We don't care about these things. We just want the game to be fun. And that is not what Threes is. It's gatekeepy. You get, destroyed by people who shouldn't be at the rating. There's so many things it's just so awful. And again, when that's your experience, sorry, we don't want to participate anymore. Especially now that we have been allowed to have something else.
I actually love Battleground Blitz a lot. Another very interesting thing to me about Threes, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I feel like Threes, to me, feels the most imbalanced of all of the brackets that I play. Threes feels the most imbalanced of anything that I play. Like, when I'm watching high-rated Threes games, every single game is just a Feral or a Rogue. Sometimes a Fury Warrior. It's like, it feels like the same thing every time. It's crazy. Like, if you're not playing like an S tier comp, Threes feels so unfun to me. Don't forget Ellie. Yeah, there's a lot of Ellie shamans too.
Yeah, this I do agree with, and that's the nice thing about, again, the solo shuffle, is you get 4 classes and you have to play with everyone in every comp possible, and the 2 healers, right? I'm just leaving them separate from that. But yeah, it's everyone plays with everyone, and you don't have to deal with, like he said, because for whatever reason, Blizzard just has a hard-on for melee classes, especially rogues. And, Feral has been up and down and whatever. But usually one warrior spec is always good, and one of the rogue specs is always number 1 S tier, blow everything else away. And again, you're just sick of seeing it. At least in the solo shuffle model, you play with it one time, you play against it 2 times. Oh well. Like at least it's fair and it's balanced and it's rotating, and there's a chance that you can beat it with an unconventional comp. So that's just my take on it, but 100%. He actually brings up a really good point. Yeah, if you're seeing the same thing, and I kind of had mentioned it previously, but just doubling down on it here. Yeah, if that's your experience, then of course you're not going to want to queue up for 3s when you're just playing the same thing over and over. Solo shuffle at least makes it fresh. Every single time you go in, you're going to get different classes.
Whereas like when I queue Blitz, there's obviously like imbalances, you know? Like if one team has a Sub Rogue and a Mistweaver Monk, the other team doesn't. It doesn't feel as good, but it doesn't feel like completely insurmountable. And Shuffle is another one. One of the reasons why I like Shuffle, I was telling Big Moran this, is I like the variety, you know? Like every game is different. There's lots of different classes you get to play with and against. You get to play with lots of different players. It's nice. I'd argue 2s are infinitely worse, but 3s have become increasingly meta with each season, and people will rotate through their ults with the same spec with the same players. Yep. Another obvious problem with 3s is the amount of boosting that goes on.
Yep. And I'm glad he's talking about it because, I mean, it's so, if you have any understanding of the game, it's so easy to see when it's being done, and it's being done so habitually. It's disgusting. It drives me nuts how insanely pervasive it is.
Like there are benefits to solo shuffle and solo queue, is that you can't really be boosted, you know? If someone's 2900 in shuffle, chances are they're really good. You know what I mean? Someone has a legend, like chances are they're decent. They had to do it themselves. But the amount of non-stop constant boosting in 3s is so bad. I feel like that is such a deterrent. Like the amount of smurfs that you have to deal with is crazy.
Yeah, and not even boosting. Just think about smurfs too, where it's like, oh, I have 15 shaman. Why? And you literally are just farming up on every single one of them, and it's so frustrating to have to deal with that over and over again. It's the same effect as boosting, and the fact that they just allow people to do it. It's not even different classes. It's just multiple. I have, 5 of a class. It's the same effect as boosting, and it ruins the game for people at lower ratings.
I think that partially because of all the CC changes over the years. When less CC DR'd and when CCs were longer, more comps were viable due to different win conditions. Not to mention how CC changes made Shaman worse because they were good at diffusing CC. They got forced to be micro CC damage bots. For the vast majority of us done dads, as Super T says, solo shuffle is the only way. I'm not using my very limited time to organize a 3s team to fall apart after one loss. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But
exactly, and that's the point that I'm making. Where as soon as you're in there, you're in LFG again, and you're gonna waste more time than you do sitting in a solo shuffle queue.
I did think it was interesting to hear. Because this is how private servers did it, right? Like private servers basically had it so you would just solo queue into 3s. So it was like when you're doing arena, it was the same game mode. There was no shuffle and there was no, well, there was 3s. There was no shuffle, but when you solo queued, you would just get into a 3s game with people, which I think is at least somewhat interesting.
And again, I wouldn't mind that if everyone had that exact same experience. But then at that point, what's the difference between that and shuffle, really? And the positive about shuffle is that you play with everyone, so you get an actual meter of, okay, how well, not just a one-off. Did you win this game? Was the person on tilt? It's much more controlled for abnormalities in a game. If it's just one game, someone could panic or whatever, they just weren't thinking, they went Mongo. But if you have multiple games and you play with people multiple times and you can kind of coach them, because I've done that before where you coach someone and you say, hey, last time you ran out into the middle, if you could like hang back, or if you can peel for me instead, you can make changes in strategy too, which honestly I prefer more than just a one-off solo queue system.
Maybe it's something that they should experiment with like a brawl, That's another one. Yeah. Why? Because it puts everyone in the same bracket, which is nice. You know what I mean? I think that's not a bad thing. Maybe it would bring back using voice comms and stuff too, which, yeah, for solo queue could be a little bit problematic, but...
Yeah. And I've said it before, but it doesn't... I don't think everyone could be in the same bracket. But then also the voice thing. I think he knows it. That was kind of his, like, that might be a problem. Yeah, there's too many people at Flame nowadays in every version of the game. In Classic, in Hardcore Classic, in Retail, there's just how many people... It seems like almost every single solo shuffle, there's at least one player that wants to blame everyone else. And in essence, they're actually the one that is playing awful. So just my perspective on it and what I've experienced. But yeah, they would have to actually record it and monitor, which Blizzard has shown they have no desire to invest into actually policing their own game.
I got a message by Fujikaze as well. He says, what if the solo shuffle season was 1 or 2 months shorter than the regular 3 season? That way there's a time period where everyone is pushing regular 3s and another earlier time period where everyone is pushing for solo queue rank 1. I don't think that's a bad idea either. I actually think it's a problem that the season ends for all 3 things at the same time.
I agree with him on this. Because, yeah, if you're trying to push for achievements and with the way that they ramp up the rating, how they inflate it, especially towards the end, yeah, it becomes a big issue. And the problem is having so many brackets available if you are trying to be, if you're trying to participate in all those brackets. But again, this is kind of rank 1 brain because the average person is just going to do BG Blitz and solo shuffle. So, like, no one, again. But, yeah, if you're trying to push all of them, that is kind of a problem. But, again, same thing. If they had it like that, where it was a waterfall, if I was looking at it, I would just not participate. I just don't care about 3s. I don't play 3s right now. So, like, why do I care? I'm not interested. I'm not going to play it. Like, or 2s, or, there's no rating for 2s, but... Yeah, like RBGs, I just don't care at this point. And if you did waterfall it and had them end at different times, I just wouldn't play the other brackets. I would literally just play solo shuffle, maybe BG Blitz. But even then, I was so annoyed at how slow the MMR... Well, not the MMR. The MMR went up really quickly, but the actual rating, versus my MMR, it's just so annoying to try and make it climb versus where my MMR is. And so I stopped trying to do it. But that's a different complaint.
It makes it almost impossible to push for them all. It's an interesting thought. Like, if the season ended at different times for different brackets, like, okay, solo shuffle is...
And his argument here is really, I think it only becomes an issue if you're trying to do 3s or RBGs with the other 2, because quite honestly, and that's what I would do when I was gearing, and that was part of the reason why, because I'm not even really interested in Battleground Blitz, but because I was trying to gear up so quickly, I would just queue for both of them, and one of them would pop all the time. So again, that makes that queue time almost irrelevant, because you do a world quest and Battleground Blitz pops. You play that. Okay, re-queue for that as soon as you're out. Okay, now my solo shuffle popped. Do another daily, whatever. Do another world quest, and then the next one pops, and it keeps going and keeps going. And so again, that's why I don't really think it's that bad of an experience. But yeah, when you're trying to push the organized ones, obviously you can't queue in that same way for solo shuffle and Battleground Blitz. So it's almost like you have to. Yeah, it's hard to push all 4 of the rated ones that matter, but at the same time, it is what it is. Like, I get that, but that reminded me that actually queuing isn't as bad when you're queued for multiple things and they pop, and you can participate in multiple brackets.
Is done this week, Blitz is done this week, and 3s is done this week. I kind of encourage people to push the different brackets at different times. Could be interesting. I also just think in general that the seasons are way too long right now. 6-month seasons are absolute insanity, considering like the most fun times of the season are the beginning and the end. Having like 4 months of downtime, you know what I mean? Like the first month and the last month are probably the most fun. Having like this weird 4-month period where like nothing's really going on is crazy. I think I would like to see PvP seasons return to like multiple seasons per tier. You know, like 3-month seasons. Over 6 months is kind of crazy. Piggybacking that idea, it'd be nice if there were systems that promote friending people you met in Shuffle, so at the end of the Shuffle you're prompted to add people you played with or something. Yeah, that would be cool too. You could see all the people, or even what if they added like a commendation system in WoW? Like you could commend people. It just feels like there's so much that they could do. You know, the classic WoW expansion, for example, the season starts off and people play meta comps, but there's a ton of people playing random comps that aren't S tier. Over time, once people will quit, the ladder turns into 3 comps and the same people are playing. Everyone new has quit. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why when you look at rating distributions, it falls off a cliff after 1800, which goes to show you that a lot of people are driven by cosmetic rewards also. Because the main thing you get at 1800 is the elite set, right?
Yeah, and that's basically all I did. I went up to 1800, got the cosmetics, and then I just decided I was going to stop queuing because it just wasn't really fun, and there's other games, and I just played those instead.
People get their elite set, and they just don't play anymore. The biggest problem with the player base numbers is that PvEers don't have a reason to PvP anymore, and that deflates the ladder too much. Yeah, but there's a reason why they did that too. You have to remember, like, a lot of the times they make these decisions, it's because of, you know, things that the player base is saying. If PvEers, like, the way I see it is, if they're going to make it so PvEers need to PvP for power, they have to do the opposite as well. Would you guys be happy if you had to raid and do high mythic plus to arena? I don't think you would. It's just, yeah, these conversations are fun. I mean, they're fun and they're also sad. I feel like we're in kind of a constant state of, yeah, hopefully it gets fixed next expansion. Even at the beginning of the expansion, we're talking about hopefully it gets fixed next expansion. This guy says, Carlos is just mad that Solo Shuffle revealed how he gets carried by his team in threes. He's the only threes rank 1 who is unable to get a singular rank 1 title in Shuffle. And Fernion says, Solo Shuffle, it has legitimately killed PvP. Remove it and add a solo queue system into normal threes ladder instead and give people a separate solo queue rating. Oh, it might have been Infernion that I was reading. That way people can queue solo and even get Gladiator, and the ladder isn't split in half and inactive. I think it was Infernion that I read. I think
it's not split in half. The majority actually play solo shuffle, so maybe we just get rid of 3v3 instead.
It's an interesting one. The problem that I have with WoW PvP right now is the issues aren't hard to fix. They've been discussed for years. MMR, rewards, shuffle queue times, LFG. Could be formatted better, season length, it's always the same. Maybe they'll fix it. Comparing things 1-1 in a vacuum when there's so many factors of this feels odd. What do you mean?
So I would imagine what they're talking about is what I've been saying, where the game is just dying. And so the problem is with that, if it is just dying, then there's other factors at play here. It's just less popular in general. Again, if that's what Bellular is talking about in all of his videos, that the mythic participation and the raid participation and everything is down. All the numbers are down. And so you can't really be trying to have this conversation about how this was, 3v3 by itself was better when the whole game is dying. You just can't compare numbers. It's essentially apples and oranges at this point in time. All right, so that kind of is all my points, more or less. I just kind of wanted to make this video because, again, I saw Venruki's video about it, and I thought, he's pretty balanced on it, but I wanted to provide an additional viewpoint from kind of a more average player and kind of what they experience and, maybe help shine some light onto what the actual issues are and why solo shuffle is as popular as it is. Because, again, I think it was born out from a bunch of pain points that the average player, and that's why it has been asked for so long. There's just pain points that the average player has been experiencing for a long time, and there's a reason why it's so popular. So with that, if you made it this far, feel free to leave a subscription. That way you can see my other videos as I release them. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.